Okay, it is my great pleasure now to introduce our first speaker of the year, 2015. Shari Farmer is working at the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office for 11 years. She is the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Victim Witness Assistance Program. Okay, I think I got it right now. And she's going to be speaking to us a little bit about the helping victims become survivors and survivors become thrivers. And we have some wonderful handouts on the table for you as well. So welcome, Shari.
I tend to have a very large voice, so do I need this? No. Okay. It was kind of going in and out, so I was like, hopefully I can speak in such a way where I won't need to hold it. Good morning. How's everyone doing today?
Great. Good morning.
Good. I am Shari Farmer. I am the field deputy for the LA County District Attorney's Victim Witness Assistance Program. The program has been around since 1977, so it is not a new program. However, I'm always amazed at the number of people who have never heard of it. So you have a packet in front of you that I provided. Inside, you have the actual PowerPoint presentation that I was going to show, but we're having some technical difficulties, so thank God you've got the PowerPoint in your packet. So we'll just go along with the PowerPoint. If you don't mind, we'll just follow it, and I'll give you my presentation in that manner. And if you have any questions, by all means, raise your hand, yodel, whatever you want to do, so I know you have a question. The last thing I want you to do is forget your question. I can always get back on track with regard to the subject and the topic at hand. So, starting with, I'll always say page 1, slide 1, or slide 2, wherever we are, so we don't lose one another. So the history of this program, I'm on page 1, slide 2.
Okay.
It provides compensation for victims of a violent crime. Like I said, the program has been around since 1977. So there are a number of advocates all throughout the county that actually assist the victims that we can locate. And when I say we can locate, that is the hardest part of our job. The hardest part is trying to wrap our arms around all of the victims that are out there. When the suspect is known, it is very easy for us to find that victim. Because we work in the DA's office, there's going to be a deputy district attorney working that case, and all they have to do is walk over to the office of my advocate and say, hey, I've got a victim, I need your help. Where we have problems is where the suspect is unknown. Because if the suspect is unknown, that means that the advocate may not know that that victim exists. That's where partnering with a lot of these different organizations comes in handy for us. Because you may very well see a victim before we do. So at Sukasa or at For the Child, or I'm thinking of the places that I heard and the people that I know, and Casa Youth Shelter, you may very well see someone before us and say, hey, by the way, you may need to go to ... to the Victim Witness Assistance Program, because there are a lot of services that we provide a victim. So, having said that, page 1, slide 3, we have the Victim Witness Assistance Program is broken up into 2 different sections. The first section is our direct services section. That's where all of the advocates work. I have 36 advocates all throughout the county of Los Angeles. The majority of them work in criminal courthouses. However, I do have 5 that work in LAPD stations. And they work in those stations because those stations seem to write a very high volume of police reports. Those stations are Southeast, Southwest, Hollywood, Rampart, and Central. Now, when you say Victim Witness Assistance Program, there is a VWAP, shorter. There's a VWAP in every county. Okay, San Diego has one, Ventura. We're not special in that regard. However, Los Angeles County is the only county that separates the program with regard to county and city. The city of Los Angeles is so large that they have their own Victim Witness Assistance Program. So when we get our money from Sacramento for the program, 25% of it is carved out and given to the city of LA. They add additional money to that 25%, and then they run their own victim witness assistance program. So they have a different director. I think they have 11 or 12 advocates, and all of their advocates are in police stations. So sometimes it can be a little confusing when people call me and say, oh, I want some services, and I go, well, where was your police report written? And they'll say 77th station. Well, I know that there's an advocate, a city advocate in the 77th station. So we have to be just kind of, just ask a little more questions to verify who should actually be assisting that person. I don't want to step on any toes. I want to make sure that that city advocate has first right to work with that person. However, because we're very different, I don't even know if that person is at work, not at work, so we try to communicate with one another as much as possible for the benefit of the victim. So our second unit is our claims verification unit. Our claims verification unit is where all of the claims go once the advocate assists the victim in filling out their claim form for California Victim Compensation Program. Is there anyone in here that helps the victim fill out that claim form for Cal VCP? Okay. Oftentimes what I say is, if you are doing that, that means that you're sending it directly to Sacramento. Having said that, your wait seems to be pretty long, right? The time frame by which you get an approval from Cal VCP, oftentimes it's 4 to 6 months if you're filling it out and sending it. Because when you send it to California Victim Compensation Program, they're looking for ancillary paperwork, like the police report, like any supplementaries. Any of that information you may not be able to send with that form. When one of my advocates does it, they have direct contact with the detectives, so they can get the police report. We then send it to our claims verification unit that pre-approves it, and then sends it to Sacramento, so it's a 1 to 3 month wait. So I always put that on the table, depending upon how long it may be taking you in your areas. If it's taking you a long time to get that approval, that would be the reason. So just as an FYI to you, if your clients come back to you and say, well, it's taking so long and it's not approved yet, I'm still waiting, am I going to be able to see a counselor? Are they going to pay for my medical bills? Sometimes that process takes a little longer. So just as an FYI to you. Page 2. So what is covered? What does the program pay for? So we pay for the medical expenses for the victim. This is any victim of a violent crime. I will talk a little later about the eligibility of the program, but I'm first letting you know what is covered through the program. So we will pay for the victim's medical bills. We will pay for the victim to seek counseling. And we have vetted a number of counselors. So every type of counseling is not right for every person. So we've got music therapy, we have art therapy, we have all kinds of different types of therapy that we have vetted. And when I say that we have vetted it, what that means is we've been to that office, we've talked to those people, and they recognize that they will accept what Cal VCP pays as 100% of payment. Anybody can go anywhere. My fear is that when a victim goes to a therapist and the therapist has not agreed to accept only what Cal VCP will pay, that victim will get billed. And the last thing I want to do is re-traumatize a victim by them receiving a bill in the mail. So when I say we've vetted them, that means that they are aware that all they will receive is what Cal VCP accepts, and they are okay with that, okay? So we will help relocate. So for people with either an emotional reason to relocate or a safety reason to relocate, we will assist in the relocation by paying up to $2,000 to assist them in that relocation. I am right now in communication with the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, trying to get them to accept that $2,000 as full move-in rate. Because that $2,000 is the same for the entire state of California. So if you happen to live in Fresno, that may be great. But if you live in LA, that $2,000 might not pay for your pinky nail. So I'm working with the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles for a lot of apartment complex owners to accept that $2,000 as full rate of pay. So I'll keep you posted. We pay for income loss. So if someone has lost their income as a result of the incident, maybe they were in the hospital for 2 or 3 months, we will pay for their loss of income. And at this point, the loss of income we pay is at 100%. Okay, it's not even a workers' comp or a 60% or a 66 or a 50. We pay 100% of loss of income. If the person was paralyzed as a result of the incident, we will retrofit their house and their car. Okay. Going back to the relocation I mentioned the 2 different issues, emotional and safety. So if it's safety, oftentimes it's gang related, and maybe there's some level of intimidation or retaliation or fear. So the law enforcement will write a form to allow the relocation to go through for safety. And for emotional, it's the therapist that write a form to allow it to go through for emotional. We just had we have them a lot actually, but we just had a kid that was 15 years old that was shot and killed on the balcony of their apartment, and the mom just could not bring herself to go back into that apartment ever again. So we did the relocations are very quick turnarounds. We did the relocation so that she can find another place and the family can be relocated. We pay up to $5,000 for funeral burial. So if the victim actually passed away, we assist the family in up to $5,000 for the services, to pay for the services and the burial for that loved one, for their loved one. Okay? Crime scene cleanup. If there was a crime inside a home or something needs to be cleaned, maybe there's blood splatter all over, we will pay for the crime scene to be cleaned up. So we pay for that as well. Yes?
Shari, you skipped over home security. What does that entail?
Home security is, let's say, relocation is very easy if you are renting. But if you own your home, that's a little more difficult to relocate. So we will pay up to $1,000 for cameras and surveillance in your home. Yes?
If it takes a long time, what do people do? Like if your home has been splattered with blood, can people pay for it themselves and then get reimbursed, or do you have to wait until it's approved to clean up the home?
They can, but usually crime scene cleanup, relocation, those types of things happen very quickly.
Oh, okay.
We know that there was a crime. We know that it needs to be cleaned up. We have a list of people that we have vetted that are all kind of on call, that already know, and they will go right out and clean the crime scene. So as long as they're eligible, keep in mind there's 3 levels of criteria that make someone eligible for this program. The first one, I'm going way out of context, but that's fine, we're family. There are 3 criteria that make someone eligible for this program. The first one is that you must cooperate with law enforcement. Okay, so you cannot say, I don't want to talk to you, get out of my face, I don't want to testify. You can't do that and be eligible for the program. The second one is that you cannot be a contributor to your own crime. So I cannot run into the liquor store, steal a bunch of stuff, and on my way out get shot in the back and say, oh, I want victim witness. Okay, so you cannot contribute to your own crime. And the last one is that you cannot be on felony probation or parole. And the reason that is because this fund is funded through restitution. I always like to say it's like the defendants paying back the victims for what they've done. But there are a lot of parolees and probationers that owe restitution. So we're not going to pay them out of a bucket in which they owe money to. Okay? So those are the 3 criteria, and that is it. I do a lot of briefings with law enforcement, and I'm always quick to tell them just because you are a gang member does not preclude you from being eligible for these services. Sometimes gang members are not eligible because the reason they're a victim is based on retaliation, which means they would not. But if I'm a gang member and I'm merely walking to the liquor store to get a soda and someone shoots me and it has nothing to do with retaliation, maybe, I mean, they don't like us and we don't like them, but we didn't shoot at them first and now they're retaliating. If that's the case, then that would be considered contributing to your own crime. But with having said that, if that's not the case, that gang member is eligible for our services too. Okay? Yes.
I have a question. What about the family members?
The family members are what we call derivative victims, and all of the family members, which consist of parents, siblings, and children of that victim, they are all eligible for the mental health counseling component with regard to the services.
Thank you.
So when you say cooperate with law enforcement, they need to be willing to press charges, to testify. What does that mean?
When I say cooperate, it all depends on to what extent, because if we don't even know who the suspect is, they're not testifying. There's no need to testify. But if the police officers have questions, if they want to interview them, if they want to, because sometimes you may need to do a lot of that to gather evidence to even find the suspects. They need to fingerprint their house if something happened in the home. But if somebody says, no, I don't want you to fingerprint my house, that would be uncooperative. So it all depends on to what extent that case has moved forward. Yes?
Do you used to have to file a police report?
I'm sorry?
You used to have to file a police report?
Yes, it is mandatory to file a police report in order to receive our services, with the exception of domestic violence. Okay? So everyone needs a police report in order to receive our services. And the reason they need that is because we need some type of confirmation that this actually happened. We get calls all day long that's where someone will call us and say, oh, somebody just beat me up on the corner and I heard you guys give $300. Can you help me? Did it really happen? Did you beat yourself up? I don't know. So as a result, it's that police report that confirms what really happened. However, with domestic violence, we recognize that oftentimes the person that was victimized does not want to turn over on their perp. As a result, there are other forms of paperwork that we can receive in lieu of the police report. The types of paperwork we would be looking for would be a restraining order. Remember, the more of these you have, the better, because we've got to send all of this now to California Victim Compensation Program and pretty much say, I know we don't have a report, but we have all of this, so can you please approve this? That's really what we're saying to them. So a restraining order, a copy of the restraining order. If they have children, the DCFS intake form, I think it's 1027, that intake form that DCFS does, a copy of that. Medical bills that they may have. Anything on a letterhead with the organization that is working with that family. So it could be the domestic violence shelter, it could be the organization that is giving them counseling, anything on their letterhead that will assist Cal VCP in understanding, yes, this really happened, because remember, we don't have the police report. Okay? Any other questions? Okay. We do have emergency assistance. Emergency assistance can come in very handy for a lot of our victims. We are able to get $300 very quickly for those victims that come into the office that may need immediate help. So let's say, for instance, there's a domestic violence victim that fled the home. I mean, just had to flee quickly. But maybe they're a diabetic and they didn't think to grab their insulin. That $300 could pay for that immediately. If I was assaulted and I wore glasses and I was hit in the face, my glasses broke, that $300 could pay for that immediately. That's money that is not from California Victim Compensation Program. That is money that is right out of the district attorney's budget. So that $300 with regard to immediate assistance for emergencies can come in very handy. It can pay for clothing, it can pay for food, it can pay for dentures, anything, insulin, any immediate need that victim and their family may have. So we also have this emergency assistance.
We have, in general, we have clients that's pretty much a slam dunk. We know they're going to be eligible. Does this program, can we assure people that it's retroactive, or they need to not get services until they're approved, like in 1 to 3 weeks? Or
no, it can
4 to 6?
definitely be retroactive. There's a lot of retroactivity, especially with regard to the counseling. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we talked about who this program, who is eligible for the program. What we call direct victims, which is the victim themselves, and then derivative victims, who are the parents, siblings, and children. So for us, when we get one case does not necessarily mean one person. So in Long Beach, as an example, I have 2 advocates that work in the Long Beach courthouse. They have 700 caseload, but that's 2,900 people.
Oh my gosh.
So it can be a lot of people depending upon how large one's family may be. We had a guy, we all tell this story because it's so amazing, we just all remember it. But there was a boyfriend-girlfriend situation. The girlfriend didn't want to be in the relationship anymore, and he was one of those, if I can't have you, nobody can kind of people. So he waited for her family to have a family gathering. And on Thanksgiving, he went to the house and he killed her and 6 of her family members.
Oh my God.
So 7 people all in the same family. That 7 people really meant 69 people for us. When you take into consideration the parents, the siblings, and so that, I mean, 7 people all in one family, he killed all at one time.
2 years ago.
Yes.
2 years ago, somewhere out east of LA.
Yeah, I'm sorry?
Somewhere east of LA.
No, this happened about 5 or 6 years ago. This one happened about, yeah, who said Hawaiian Garden? Yeah, you know this. Yeah. So it was extremely tragic, but that's a ton of people then that we now have to assist. So the advocates are always busy. There's no question. We're always doing as much as we can for the victims and referring them to you. That's our job. Our job is not to be their therapist, but it's to refer them to all of the services that they need through the program. So we try to vet as many as possible. I have vetted maybe 40 to 50 different cemetery and mortuaries that will accept the $5,000 as full rate. There are a lot of them that say, oops, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm charging what I charge, and it is what it is. So there's no push with regard to some of them. But we try to find all types of opportunities and alternatives for our families. So I found an organization called Science Care. Has anyone heard of Science Care? Science Care is phenomenal. For a family where, let's say, their child was killed and they just don't know which way to go. They haven't prepared for a funeral, burial, services, or anything. This organization called Science Care, they work with White Diamond Funeral Services, and I can always pass this information on to Paul and he can extend it to all of you. But they are a full body donation. You donate the full body. Very different from organ donation. Everybody has a little pink card with their driver's license. Well, they do full body donation. And because they want your tissue. Tissue is really important. It can tell you a lot about cultural, it can tell you a lot about environment, it can help with cancer, it can help with a number of things. So they want the tissue. Once they get the tissue, they will cremate the body and they will give the remains back to the family for free. Wow. So it's for a lot of our victims, families especially, who were just not prepared with regard to a homicide or something along that line. Not everybody's interested in cremation, totally understand, but we just want to give them as many options as they can possibly get. Yes?
I don't want to get you off track, but is that, I was actually looking at that personally, and it seems like it's a business, not a nonprofit. Does that matter, or?
No,
it's
this
.com, not a .org.
Oh no, but Science Care is nonprofit, just like the organ donation.
Oh, really?
They are nonprofit. They came and did a huge presentation for us because we wanted to understand more about them make sure.
Why are they .com and not .org?
I don't know that every .com is a nonprofit or nonprofit. I have no idea.
Okay, good. That's very reassuring.
I'm not that technologically savvy. I don't know about the. I don't know.
Just a convenience or by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think every .org or I don't think the nonprofit is based on .com or .org.
It could be .net.
Okay, so we talked about that. Let me just say, in order to be eligible, we talked about the 3 levels of eligibility. You have 3 years from the date of the incident to file a claim with California Victim Compensation Program. Okay, so you have 3 years from the date to fill out the claim form. If you are a child that witnessed domestic violence or a child that was a victim of sexual assault, you have until your 28th birthday to file a claim. Yes?
So, can you talk about that a little bit more in terms of police reports and non-police reports?
Sure. So when I say a witness, remember, we're victim witness, so we not only assist victims, but we also assist witnesses. So if you were a witness, let's say you were 5 or 6 years old, you were a witness of domestic violence. If the abuser did not fill out the police report, that claim form is going to go to California Victim Compensation Program to see if it will be approved, right? We're talking about the one without the police report. If that's approved, then once that's approved, anyone else is going to be approved under that. That would be a derivative victim. So if you were a 5 or 6 year old and you witnessed this domestic violence, what I always tell my advocates is see if that family can fill out that claim form as soon as possible. Because once that first one is approved, all the derivatives are going to be approved because they were a victim as well. They witnessed it, especially if they were 5 or 6 or, you know, a child. And if they are a child in the home, they're going to approve it based upon the fact that they were a child of the victim. So I always tell the advocates, fill out the claim form for that child immediately and send it to California Victim Compensation Program. They'll hold on to it until that child is 28 years old because they know they have until their 28th birthday. So 5 or 6, it might not even register what you saw. You might not be totally affected but right away, but all of a sudden you're in high school, you're in a psych class, and you walk out depressed and you have no idea why. Now you may need some counseling. But Cal VCP has been holding on to your claim form ever since you were 5 or 6. It's already in the system. So it's so much easier to do it at the time that it occurred. I'm not saying you can't do it 20 years later. It's just harder to find all of the necessary paperwork and be able to do it as efficiently than if you would have done it right when it occurred. But they're going to hold on to that. You're in the system. They're aware. If you don't need counseling until you hit 21, you're already in the system. Now the other plus about, I shouldn't say plus, but the other piece to being a witness as a child of domestic violence, we do not consider you a derivative victim. We consider you a direct victim. Because there have been a lot of I'm having a brain fart and I can't, the word's not coming out. Studies, thank you. There have been a lot of studies that have shown that a child that has witnessed domestic violence is just as damaged as that victim themselves. So they, for our purposes, would be considered a direct victim and not a derivative victim, which means they're eligible for all of the services that a direct victim would be eligible for, like the payment of the medical bills, everything else. Remember, derivative victims are only eligible for the counseling component, but the direct victims are eligible for everything. Okay, page 4, slide 1, talks about that you must apply within 3 years, so we just talked about that. A minor, it says their 28th birthday. So I always say apply as early as possible, just because the information is top of mind and it's easier to fill out that claim form for those victims. Yes?
I'm wondering about, in terms of, I know sometimes there's a little room on some of those dates, and I'm working with a lot of folks where it's past the 28th birthday, but during their 20s they were experiencing very severe mental health diagnoses, sometimes hospitalization, things like that. Would there be any wiggle room for someone, say, who's 30, who's at a place where they can now talk about the child sexual abuse or witnessing, you know, domestic violence for 18 years in those sorts of cases?
Cal VCP would tell us no. However, I would say apply anyway. They may look at those on a case-by-case basis, but I don't even know why they picked 28. That's such an odd age. I don't know what studies they did that figured out 28 was the age, but we always ask them that. Is that 28 really hard and fast? They go, yes. We have to stop somewhere. We can't do it forever. We have to stop somewhere. But I would say if someone was over 28, I would say apply anyway and give a justification for why. The justification sometimes can make all the difference in the world. So make the justification, you know, and if it makes sense, then they may very well approve it. Yes?
What about for kids who were abused, say in foster care, or they don't even know who the abuser was?
Well, first we need to know that they exist.
Right.
That's the doozy. So hopefully we're hoping, and we have a pretty good relationship with DCFS. It's not always easy to get information from them, but sometimes, I mean, we can, but it all depends on what we know. So if we know that if DCFS would have to come to us, or somebody would have to come to us to let us know that this child was even victimized. So how we get that information from DCFS, usually we don't. I mean, we'll get information in domestic violence. DCFS will contact us oftentimes, and I think they contact us for domestic violence because they know sooner or later we'll find out.
True.
I mean, that sounds really bad, but I'm just trying to be honest.
True.
But for something that may have happened under the radar, if you will, that we may never find out about, I don't know that we ever would.
It's true.
Somebody's got to come forward to let us know. And that's part of the reason why I do presentations. Because there are so many people out there that don't know the program exists. I'm hoping that now that you know, there may be things that you may find out about where you would say, oh, hey, you know what? You might be eligible for this program. So when I see people doing car washes on the street, I always stop. And I say, can you tell me the impetus for why you're out here? You never know. Sometimes I bump into people and they're doing a car wash because someone was shot and killed, but they don't know our services exist.
Wow.
So I bump into them, find out, oh, wow, okay. Now all of a sudden they're eligible for our services. Yes.
I'm actually with DCFS, and I didn't know this program.
See?
Yeah. And I used to work, I retired from
Which DCFS office are you in?
South County. I'm a supervisor in ER, so we get the initial calls. I'm Pam Jones. If you ever get a call from me or call me, that's who I am. And so we get a lot of presentations from victims of crime, so we know about them. We have like 2 or 3 different.
When you say victims of crime, who are you referring to?
There's 2 or 3 of them. There's 2 or 3 programs called Victims of Crime.
Because people call us victims of crime all the time, so I'm not.
This is not you. You are not them.
Private practice mental health groups that call themselves victims of crime too.
There's a cut, yeah. And I think that's who they are, because they're different. Like, we have their cards, we have their picture, so it's not an organization like you are. But I personally did not know. I'm sure my office did not know. We just had a section meeting yesterday, so we weren't aware.
Well, I do a presentation at the DCFS in Compton.
Oh, okay.
I do one there because I went to one of their meetings and I was listening to people talk and I was like, something tells me they don't know we exist. So I went to their manager and I said, I would really like to do a presentation for your staff.
I think that would be great.
So now I have a pretty good relationship because my advocates in the Compton courthouse, I have 3 of them there, they were getting information faxed to them from DCFS with no contact information. And so they weren't sure who it was coming from, what the situation was, and they told me, and they were like, Shari, we're having a problem. So I said, okay, let me go over there and see what's going on. But
Great.
yeah, I would love to talk to you afterwards, and I would love to set up presentations and, you know, information. And like I said, it's been around forever, but
when we are involved and we send a court, just so everyone knows, when we do send a case to court in domestic violence, we automatically have to fill out what we call a MAT assessment, which is a mental health assessment for every child from baby to 18 years old, 17 years old. So it's actually on there why it came to DCFS's attention and why we are filing a court case. So everyone is being assessed for services, mental health therapy, whatever the case is. But I think if we knew about this, I think our workers initially would not have a problem, I'm sure, referring families to this.
so going back to her question with regard to foster care, I'm just curious now how this would work. In the event of a foster care child being abused, there's a form that would be filled out?
Automatically,
And then-
we send a med assessment for assessment, a psychological assessment of each child.
And then what happens with that form?
A clinician is assigned to go out and assess the child.
And then what happens? I'm trying to figure out how we can get involved at some
They
point.
make referrals, they make linkages to appropriate
Okay.
services.
So we should be one of those,
Case on, so my
right, so
part
we
is
should
on.
be one of those linkages, in other
Would
words.
be helpful.
Okay, so we'll talk after, yes.
I used to work for DCFS, I actually retired, and when a child is injured, and you can attest for that, a lot of times they have an attorney, and their advocate is gonna be the minor's attorney in terms of getting them compensation. So they're gonna try to get compensation for that youth that was injured. But it's really a good idea for the social worker to have this information, this knowledge, because you can be the one that drives that, because they have a high caseload as well. So I think what you're saying, and even talking to our academy, I don't know if they still do an academy.
Oh yeah, they're on.
But
right
you
now.
would be definitely a person that should be present at the academy, and that's something you guys probably can connect with.
Yeah, we'll talk after. Okay, all right, so Paige, I'm sorry, yes,
I
Michelle.
don't know if you'll have time today, but we do a lot of work with victim compensation and have for years. And right now, one of the most complicated things we're coming up against is this payer of last resort concept. Because we get kids, you know, they're eligible for victim compensation. Clearly, they have Medi-Cal, but you don't know if they meet medical necessity criteria under the DMH, the Medi-Cal guidelines. Then they may have, other kids may have insurance through Covered California, but you can't find a provider on their panel that has any expertise with trauma. So you're kind of, you've got, it's like, which way do you go? You're struggling trying to figure out with, and you get, when you send it, when it gets processed through victim compensation, we're getting questions about payer of last resort. So I don't know if you have, it's a little maybe beyond the scope of today, but it's a complicated issue that we're bumping up against. And
Let me see if I can answer it this way. We are the payer of last resort, so that means any other insurance you have has to kick in first and foremost. At the 11th hour is when we kick in. So let's say something happened to me. My medical insurance, I have medical insurance, that's gonna work, that's gonna kick in first. However, anything I paid out of my pocket that my insurance did not pay for, like my deductible, my co-payments, all of that should be reimbursed to me through the program, okay? Because my medical insurance does not pay for that. Now, with regard to counseling, counseling is the only piece that you do not have to go through your own insurance for first. You do not, so even if I have a mental health counseling component to my insurance, I do not have to use that first. I can go straight to a therapist and that therapist bill California Victim Compensation Program directly. I do not have to go through my insurance for the 20 visits, or I mean, if I have an HMO, let's say a Kaiser, 20 visits, or whatever the situation, I do not have to do that first.
And why are the state is asking us for the denials, the denials from the insurance companies? I mean, they're asking a lot of questions from Sacramento once the claim is submitted to prove that they're the payer of last resort, and this is for counseling. So is there?
Yeah, I don't.
Is there training, maybe training needed at the state?
That's funny because the state comes down every now and again and we have meetings with them and we always talk about different things because right now the state is contemplating changing that loss of income I just talked about where we pay 100%. They want to go down to pay maybe 60 or 50%. So they just came out not too long ago and we had this huge meeting and we talked a lot about mental health counseling and they were very quick to say, now don't forget, you don't have to go through your insurance first. The counseling is separate from, and even though we say payer of last resort, that is not taken into consideration for counseling.
Is that in writing somewhere that we could have so we can
I will look, and not only that, what I will do is I will email CalVCP. I will email them and tell them that there's some confusion with regard to this, and whatever email I get back, I'll pass on to you, Michelle. Yeah, no problem. Or I'll pass on to Paul, and he can pass it on to everyone if everyone's interested in that information. Any other questions? Okay. All right, we're still on page 4. Just real quick, we've done the eligibility criteria. Compensation criteria, I always say we pay for people, not for property. So sometimes people will call us and say, my car was vandalized, can you help me? We don't pay for property, that's where your car insurance comes in. We pay for people. And we will assist people whether they are documented or undocumented. Okay, doesn't matter to us. If they are undocumented, we will move them in the direction of getting a U visa so that they are not being harassed while they're here with regard to deportation or anything like that. And in DV, oftentimes that's really important because the perpetrator is very quick to say, if you say something to anybody, I'll have you deported. So we will assist them whether they're documented or undocumented and then move them in the direction of a legal aid for organization that can help them with their U visa. Okay? Any questions? That's my story and I'm sticking to it. Yes?
The referral form in this packet? Is there a referral form for the victim to fill
get
out?
on our referral list, if you will?
No, for the compensation or to apply for the program, is there a referral form to fill out or a?
There's a claim form that people fill out for if they are looking for the services through California Victim Compensation Program. That is not in this packet. You can go to the California Victim Compensation Program's website if you want. I mean, they have a very extensive website and you can see the claim form there. We have tons, I mean, we always have the claim form, but I surely didn't, I'm sorry, I should have added that. I didn't think to add the claim form itself in your folders.
I guess kind of along the same lines, if we have a victim, if we provide the phone number for their nearest advocate, is that the best way?
Yeah, so if you look at the information that you have in your packet, I did give you, after the PowerPoint, this benefits reference guide, it's 2 pages. It's straight off of CalVCP's website. So it may help you with regard to coverage and things of that manner.
Oh, this is great.
So it gives you a lot of that information. See where it says relocation and it talks about how much and the whole bit. So it gives you a lot of information on these 2 pages. Then behind that, I have a list of the typically covered crimes. Okay, so just so that you know typically what the covered crimes are that are covered under this program. Behind that are 3 pages of the locations for all of the county advocates, all where they're located. So yes, if you had someone that you were sitting down talking to saying, you know, you really need to see a victim witness assistance, a victim witness rep, it would make more sense for you to call the rep with that person in your office. That way it's a soft handoff. They already know you, so they feel a little comfortable. But to just give them the number and say, give this person a call, one, they may never do it. And it may be a little more difficult because it's not kind of that soft handoff to the next person. So by all means, you can look here, find the one closest to where the person wants to go. It doesn't necessarily have to be the closest advocate to where they live. That may be most convenient, but it may not. Maybe they want to go to an advocate close to where they work.
And the advocate will help them with the form and collecting documentation.
They will help them with all of that, because even if they don't have the police report, the advocate can get the police report for them. Okay. If this is a case that's going to go to court, that advocate will assist that victim in navigating them through the criminal justice system, because that is confusing for a lot of people. There's all kinds of terms they've never heard of. What is a pretrial hearing? What is adjudication? What is a sentencing hearing? What does all of that mean to me? The advocate will navigate them through that criminal justice system. They will even take them to a dark courtroom, an empty courtroom, and say, this is what the courtroom looks like for somebody who's never been in a courtroom. The judge is going to sit up here. When it's your turn to testify, you're going to sit here. As the advocate, you all know you can either sit next to them in the box as an advocate, or you can sit in the audience. Whatever the victim likes, whatever. I always say, if they like it, I love it. So whatever makes them most comfortable is what you can do for them as the advocate. We do a lot of court support. There are a lot of people who want to go to every single solitary court appearance with regard to their case, because they want to know what's going to happen to that defendant. Mm-hmm. But sometimes they are a little intimidated because they know the defendant and maybe some of their family members are there. So the advocate will go with them to court in support of. But they will first go to the bailiff and say, hey, are the defendant's family members here? Where are they sitting? Just to make sure that they align themselves far enough away so that the victim feels comfortable. But defendants' families do some really weird things in court. They're trying to get the eye of the victim, and they make really, they do all kinds of gestures in court. But the advocate can go up to the bailiff and let them know that, and the bailiff will escort those people out of the courtroom. So it's all about trying to make the victim feel as comfortable as possible, because we don't want that victim to stay in victim mode forever. We want them to go from victim to survivor and survivor to thriver. Tiambe?
I was wondering, I know a little while back when I was training court advocates for rape crisis centers, we were told sometimes by victim witness advocates that they were so strapped that they could only be present in court with homicide victims, and that domestic violence or sexual assault or other folks weren't able to have someone come with them to the proceedings, and so that's why we needed to supply them from the agency. Is that still an issue in terms of just numbers, or?
I have not heard that. I think it all depends on how many cases we are dealing with and how many are in court. We have a family violence unit, and that unit is the one that predominantly works with domestic violence. Right. So we also have a gang and homicide unit where I have advocates in that unit. So I'm almost surprised that the homicide advocates would know how many cases the family violence, you know what I'm saying? They're in the same courtroom.
Yeah, it was rape crisis folks that were falling through the cracks. Like if it was someone for DV, we usually had an advocate. If it was someone who also, there was a homicide that was associated, they had an advocate. But folks where it was a sexual assault case were the ones who usually were told, we have to go to homicide or we have to go to DV.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I have a sex crimes advocate.
Okay.
So yeah, like I said, there's 36 of them. They're kind of all over the place. The plus is that they really work together well. Yeah. Like I said, I have 3 advocates in the Compton courthouse, and oftentimes if somebody is busy, we never know who's going to walk in. Right. And in the Compton courthouse, there are a ton of walk-ins, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. So we've got people walking in. Maybe one of them was supposed to go to court to sit with a family, but somebody just walked in and they'll say, oh, can you go to court for me? And it's not like the person doesn't know them, because they all sit in the same office. So we try to be as accommodating as possible, depending upon how many court cases there are. But you as advocates are able to do the same thing. You can go to court with them as well. And for some of your clients, they may feel even more comfortable doing it with you because you've been working with them for a period of time. And if you are not, if that's something that you want to do but you've never done it before, you can let my advocate know, and she can he or she can kind of talk to you. They can take you to the courthouse and introduce you to the bailiff, so that the bailiff knows who you are and understand why you're there. All of that can take place as well.
I appreciate that. What I like to do is tell the victim whether or not maybe there might take something might take precedent. If there's lots of cases that day, I like to fully inform them of why maybe someone might not be able to be right there at that time. So that gives me a lot of good information.
And if you have a victim, I feel like I've said that word so much today, and I hate saying that word. But if you have someone that you think is very traumatized or kind of sitting on edge with regard to even going to court, because for some of them, just the idea of going to court is overwhelming. You can always call. The office and let them know. Say, just as an FYI to you, this person is really traumatized, and I think they really need someone to be in court with them based on what's going on. They could very well pull someone from somewhere else to really be with this person based on need. You know what I'm saying? If everybody's busy, or if you have somebody that's not necessarily going to court that day, maybe they can pull that person and go to court with them. So I would always call, especially if you have that person that really wants somebody, because there are some people that say, oh, I can do this. No, I don't need anybody to go to court with me. I'm okay. But for those people who really, really need it, we really want to be there for them. So I would call and say this person really wants someone there. Yes.
And this is for crimes committed in Los Angeles County.
Correct.
So if I live in San Diego, but the crime was committed in Los Angeles County, then I would go through Los Angeles County to do all of this.
You would go through LA County for the case, but if you live in San Diego, then you're going to go to the Victim Witness Assistance Program in San Diego. Because if you go here, that means that we're going to give you referrals in LA County, but you don't live in LA County, right? So that's why all of the counties, like I said, have their own Victim Witness Assistance Program. We all work fairly closely with one another. For instance, there was a woman who lives in Gardena, and her daughter was raped and killed in Yorba Linda. So Orange County was working the case, but they didn't realize that the woman lived in LA County. So I just called the person in Orange County and said, I know the case is happening in Orange County because that's where it occurred, but the mom lives here in LA County. Can you please unlock this case in the database, because this victim compensation program has a huge database all victim witness representatives use. Can you unlock it so that we can work with the mom? And they were like, oh, we thought she lived here in Orange County. No, she doesn't live in Orange County. So it's always going to be based on where you live.
So if I live in LA County and a crime was committed in Arizona, I would apply for assistance.
Correct. You would apply first here.
Okay.
Because you want to get the services based on where you live. You don't want to have to fly all the way back to Arizona to get counseling.
So the crime doesn't have to be committed wherever you live.
No. Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. Not only that, but we also assist a lot of human sex trafficking victims that may have lived in Arizona or lived somewhere else, but the crime occurred here. And because the crime occurred here, we are helping them, especially if they're international, because there are a lot of other countries that don't have a victim witness assistance program. So if it happened here, we can assist that human sex trafficking victim here. We work with FBI, Rohita Khan, some of you may know her. We work with her very closely because she does a lot of international, working with international human sex trafficking victims. So she will call me in a minute and say, oh, I've got a victim and the crime occurred here. If the crime occurred here, then we can assist them. Yes?
Could you speak a little bit to how the board, the Petition Board, has changed about
human sex trafficking
contribution to the crime? There's an appeal process that's pretty robust when one of your victims' claims is denied. And I can remember appealing with a 15-year-old who had been sexually molested by her dad and having it denied because of victim contribution to the crime back in the dark ages, and now, or the old days. And now I know the board has changed with human trafficking.
Yes.
There's a whole different attitude.
Yes.
Could you speak to that a little bit?
Before the change, I think that Sacramento looked at human sex trafficking victims and oftentimes juveniles in a sexually assaulted situation. They didn't see them as victims, especially the human sex trafficking victims. They saw them more as prostitutes. And if you are considered a prostitute, then you're actually contributing to your own crime, right, as a prostitute. However, there was a lot of legislation, a lot of arguing, a lot of back and forth with them saying they may be acting like that, but when you look at CSEC, CSEC victims, a lot of it is coercion. So we have to take that into consideration and recognize that even though they're acting as if this is something they want to do, because oftentimes you will find that, especially with human sex trafficking victims, they act as if this is something they want to do because it's all they know. But it's really coercion that is making this happen. So I think it was March 1st, 2013, it just happened, 2013. They changed the definition of victim to include human sex trafficking victims and juvenile victims of sexual assault, even though on the face of it, it may appear that they were a part of or contributed to their crime, when in actuality they did not. So before that, it was extremely difficult for us to assist human sex trafficking victims. Very difficult. Now that they've made that change, much easier, and they are now eligible for services. Anything else? I do presentations all over the place just because I think the information is so important to get out there. So if anyone is interested in me doing a presentation anywhere, by all means let me know. On the very last page of the presentation, you have all of my information, my email, my number, any way you want to get in touch with me. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, one more thing. You do have some pamphlets. I put a domestic violence and a sexual assault pamphlet. I also gave you, I don't know if any of you have heard of Crime Survivors, Patricia Waskunis. She put together this survivor guide, really a lot of information in here. If you ever want any more materials, by all means, you can send me an email or give me a call, and I will be more than happy to send you whatever it is you're interested in getting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and again, thank you, Shari, for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.